So when I turned 20, I was diagnosed with a tumor. This is what I looked like at the time. I weighed 240 pounds, and I was pretty unhappy with myself. 1 year later, at 21, after surgeries, chemotherapy, and some complications with my health, I dropped 100 pounds and I looked like this. As you can see, it's a very stark difference between the two. Even though I'm skinnier, I'd argue that this second physique is probably worse. No fat, no muscle mass. I was just a skeleton basically. And being skinny and weak is like the grossest feeling I've ever experienced with my body. And I really wanted to change that, so I decided to start going to the gym when my chemotherapy was over. After 1 year of, progress, this is what I look like now. And even though there's like a pretty good pump and lighting going on, I'd still argue that that's a great transformation to have in a year. And I didn't just magically obtain like the discipline and drive to make that transformation, but I did struggle with a lot of really hard questions on what it means to be here and the responsibilities that we have on ourselves. Cancer, mortality, and this, they're not the most subtle teachers. Most of my adolescent years, I was not very comfortable in my own body and my own skin. My body didn't really feel mine. Walking, eating, breathing all felt very robotic and detached, sort of like piloting a mech. But a few phrases that I think really convey what I'm getting at: large hoodies, sitting at the back of the class, music, hiding, don't let them know how much. Is this relatable? It's a particularly pathetic experience, but you know that good lives make bad stories, right? So it's a pretty common background for a lot of people. Growing up unattractive, unathletic, and just overall unconfident, quite the tragedy, right? It's not the worst thing though. I think having that struggle helps you out in a lot of ways. You're led down certain paths that other people might have not been led down. And the thing about paths is that the important thing is not the destination that you get to, but rather the experiences and the perspective that walking that path gives you. There's an advantage to being at the bottom. Just like the top, you get a certain view. And while it's not a rewarding view like the top one, and it doesn't bring you any, happiness, joy, satisfaction, the view from the bottom gives you a better perspective on the bigger picture. And that's like a pretty common theme with people that I find relatable, is that they have some sort of trauma, setback, something that helped them look at life in a deeper way. Shallow experiences, lead to shallow thoughts and opinions. But having traumatic and hard experiences make you question things. And as long as you can keep your mental straight, the conclusions you get to just help you out in the long run, or they should help you out in the long run at least. The cards you're dealt with in that sense aren't necessarily as important, usually, as what you decide to do with them. Struggling in those ways when you're young is definitely a battle that you lose, and that carries on, and has ramifications down the line possibly that kind of fucks with you, coming from that insecure place. But like I was saying, it's just one battle. Life is not a single battle. It is a large, large war spanning, decades, hopefully. And the one important takeaway from battles, more than anything, is that they give you experience. It helps you level up. On top of that, EV training would help you maximize whichever stat you would like. If you lose that battle when you're young, you need to take that experience with you and use it as fuel for your future, You can't look back at that and see it as, man, that really sucks. I missed out and I didn't develop these skills and all of this. Yeah, you might have not developed it as a kid when you're like malleable and shit sticks to you and it influences you, but you're an adult now, so you can develop whatever you want to develop. And you also have like the intelligence and foresight to plan around it and just really make sure that whatever goal you have with self-improvement, is met. And I think one thing that you have to put some thought into it is that maybe your path, you weren't meant to have things a certain way. But after the fact, that's when, shit really goes down. When you get to sort of design your own shape and do stuff how you'd like. Okay, but with that out of the way, committing myself to the gym was an aggregate of quite a few things. People, Andrew Tate and David Goggins, two people who I think are just great ambassadors for what it means to be a disciplined individual. I think being exposed to their ideas on discipline really stuck with me. And the circumstances would be shame for my body. Yeah, I had good reasons to look the way that I looked. Being diagnosed with cancer, surgeries and treatment. It's all a good explanation for looking the way that I looked. But it is a viscerally gross feeling to be that skinny and weak. And I just could not bear that. That is something that I could not bear. The second one was heartbreak. That's like bread and butter for a lot of people's, gym stories and reinvention. In general, getting your heart broken is like the best way to start out at the gym because you want to prove to yourself and to that person that you can change and be better. That gives you endless motivation for the first few months, at least. After that, you're going to have to find some other motivation for sure. Those first few months will be easy as fuck if you're heartbroken. And the third reason was a really positive one. I had gratitude for my body. I was super happy that I could move and walk and just exercise because I was bedridden for a year and a half, just really fucked up. It was like a miserable experience. And once you lose something, it makes you treasure it so much more. So losing the ability to do stuff physically was like, okay, well, now I want to be able to do pull-ups and do push-ups and, you know what I'm saying? Just be physically active. And those three things I would say were just dominating as fuck. I think if you threw those things at anybody, they'd probably be motivated to make a change. So I'm pretty grateful for that. I'm grateful for the perspective change and development, character development, if you will, that I got from that whole year and a half to 2 years of stuff. I think like one of the main reasons that people don't work out when they're young is just because they're not exposed to it in an appealing way. And for me particularly, I was a very nerdy, geeky kid. Anytime I interacted with the idea of the gym or gym people, I always thought, what is this egotistical, Chad, alpha, boring, dumb? How brain dead do you have to be like a meathead and just care about muscles and aesthetics? And that was like kind of how I felt about it. I would say it's a combination of just never having any good representation for the gym and the positives that it brings, and envy that I just couldn't do it. So when those things happened to me and I decided to start working out, I was exposed to gym culture in a much better way. I would say because of the internet too, gym culture in general is larger and it's a lot more appealing than it used to be. I think it's just the greatest community for self-improvement and motivation. And I think when you really start to like get into ones that are actually respectable, of course, people whose relationship with fitness in the gym isn't some like monetary grab, but is something a little more inspirational and motivating. So it was just really helpful for me to sort of hop online, hop on TikTok and YouTube and see like, relatable and funny clips about people working out, funny situations that happen, because you feel like you're a part of something, Being able to approach it at an older age, I'm able to sort of see it much more for what it really is or what it could be, as opposed to something kind of egotistical. In general, I always yearned for aesthetics. When I was young, aesthetics to me meant drawing, talking, and just coming across a certain way with like my internal world, if that makes sense. Your physical envelope is a fucking huge part of your aesthetic image. And not even just your aesthetic image, but your image in general. When people meet you, interact with you, the first thing they really have to interact with is yourself. Your body, your face, your voice, your mannerisms, just the way you come off. There's a pretty big difference between someone who's like very obviously fit and someone who's out of shape. I am an idealist as much as, the next person, but we don't live in an ideal world. You're going to be judged based on things that you shouldn't be judged on by the people around you. I think it's incredibly irresponsible, and I would almost say beta, dare I, to understand and recognize that that is a reality and not do something about it. Because at that point, you're just lazy, Like, delusion is one thing, but recognizing something and doing absolutely nothing to change it is almost worse. I showed my before and afters at the beginning of the video, but I just want to go over it in a little more detail. This is the progress that I made in the first 3 months, and it was mainly predicated just by eating and doing very basic exercises like bicep curls, tricep extensions. I was very weak at the time. I would do typically 40 to 50 sets on a muscle group per week, which is more than double of my volume now. That was about 20 working sets per muscle per workout. Now it's closer to 8 for me. I avoided exercises like squatting, a lot of free weights, and particularly shoulders. I did not like training shoulders, nor did I really understand that you had to isolate them, so I didn't train them. At the end of the 3 months, I had made progress, and my goal of looking like a normal human being was slowly being realized. In the next 3 months is when I started to notice real progress, and with proper lighting and a pump, I could look like I somewhat worked out. Around this time, I was obsessed with chicken, rice, and protein powder. I thought those 3 things were all you needed to get swole. I didn't understand macros, food tracking, maintenance calories, none of that stuff. But the important thing is that I was still eating and trying to put stuff into my body, and also working out with intensity. At this point, I was very obsessed with taking pictures and just trying to get all these angles of me and trying to look big in them. Around this time, I definitely started doing hack squats and shoulder workouts for sure, and I started introducing more variety overall. By the end of the 6 months, I had finally gotten to a point where I was comfortable enough in myself to wear t-shirts and not worry about being perceived as incredibly skinny or weak, and the gains did not slow down at all, so for the next 3 months, I went pretty ham. In my 5th month of working out, I had some stomach issues because of that. Really scared me from eating a lot, because it just reminded me of health struggles that I had before. I would still eat, but just not to the extent that I should have been eating. It was sort of like an unintended mini cut. At this point, I had finally realized that I should probably only do around 8 working sets per muscle group, and I started to do more free weight movements, such as squats, some deadlifting. Those YouTube twins might have had something to do with it. At this point, I had already fallen in love with working out, and I would be there without fail. Well, matter of fact, throughout my entire first year, there was very few days where I didn't go when I was supposed to go. By the end of these 9 months, the difference from where I started was pretty huge. And finally, in the last 3 months, I think I've made the most progress actually. In a lot of these pictures, you can definitely see just much more muscle mass, the lighting hitting a lot differently, a little less reliance on angles. My legs, which have always been good, were still going strong and I think overpower my upper body. In these last 3 months, I learned about macros and the sort of ratios of food that you want to put into your body. I tried to eat more than my maintenance calories, and I made leaps and bounds of improvements on my mind-muscle connection and form overall. And with enough experience lifting, you understand the mechanics of how your body works better. Things like tempo, time under tension, mind-muscle connection, your proper form, squeezing at the end. Once you put enough time working out and making sure that you understand what's going on with your body, you should understand all of these things, and they should be natural to you after a substantial amount of time working out. And another thing is that you have to tap into the wealth of knowledge that is online. There have been times where I've gone to a commercial gym, and I've also been this person, but you see somebody doing an exercise and you can tell they have no idea what is going on. They just found some workout on some crappy video. Because if you actually put time and effort into figuring out what hypertrophy is, the position you have to put your muscles in to get them to grow, the idea of controlling the weight and using form, all of these things are information that's out there, but a lot of people ignore it. So I think using the internet is incredibly important, and watching other people work out is also incredibly important. Overall, I'm very happy with the results of my 1-year transformation. There's a possibility I'm going to hit somewhat of a wall in terms of gaining weight. I don't have my full pancreas, and I take supplements to digest my food. So while I try to eat in a calorie surplus to gain weight and muscle, it makes it a little bit harder, and some of that is just in my head, and I'm sure I could eat more, but that's just a struggle I'm going to have to be facing in this next year of lifting. Either way, I'm hoping that I can make as big of a difference in the second year as I did in my last one.